Good afternoon and welcome to Quiz Cymru. I hope you're ready to spark an interest in Welsh culture yet again today. I'm Sue-Ann from e-sgol and joining me today is Danielle Cowell from Amgueddfa Cymru. Prynhawn da, Danielle.
Prynhawn da.
Prynhawn da. Now then, we will be doing the whole session and quiz through Kahoot, and you can participate in pairs, as a group, class. So learners join now using the QR code or through the link to the website and enter the PIN. Now then, let's see how many. Have we got a few participants? Yes, we've got a few participants. Oh, they're all joining. Brilliant. Now then, the quiz is based on stories from Museum Wales. There will be 3 stories with 4 questions after each treasure, so 12 questions in total. Learners, you are responsible for managing your smart devices, not your teachers, so listen carefully. Now then, teachers, if your learners reach the top 5 at the end of the quiz, take a picture and send it to us with the nickname, the name of the class and the name of the school, because you'll have the chance to win a contribution towards the cost of a bus to get to the final round of the quiz at Science Fagan. Now then, Danielle, I'm just going to check that the QR code is working, because I did see a message come up there. Yeah, lovely. So welcome, Danielle. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Raring to go. Nice to see so many schools coming in.
It is wonderful. Yeah, I'm going to click start, Danielle. Now, if the schools haven't had a chance to join in yet, the code will remain on the screen for a little bit. So don't worry if you haven't joined, you can join as Danielle is speaking. Diolch, Danielle.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I'm Danielle and I'm the Digital Learning Manager for Amgueddfa Cymru. So my role is to work with staff across all our 7 museums. And if you look on the map there, you can see our 7 museums. Now, today I'm presenting from St Fagan's National History Museum, which I'm sure some of you have visited before. And if you look at the map, you might be able to see some others you visited, or maybe some you'd like to visit in the future. So our role at the museum is to look after the treasures and collections of Wales for the people of Wales. So that's for you, for Sue-Ann, for all of you in your classes there. And the different museums specialise in different things. So Big Pit is all about the coal industry. St Fagan's has lots of different houses taken from different locations across Wales. But the museum I'm going to start with today is National Museum Cardiff. And this is where our first story comes from. So it's more of a behind the scenes story, but it's about access to some of our collections. So I'm going to tell you about Amgueddfa Cymru Images. So we have an online library of images at Amgueddfa Cymru. And basically it's a picture library containing some of the finest items from the National Collection of Wales. And it hasn't got any copyright restrictions. And what that means, Sue-Ann, is anyone can download these images for free to use them in their project work or through different types of work that they might be doing. And then on the next slide, you can see some of those collections. And we believe that adopting this kind of open access policy allows everyone access to these collections, so you can all use them in innovative ways and be inspired by artists and different people from the past. Now you can see it's been organised into different themes. So on the next slide there, Sue-Ann, you can see the different themes. So depending on what topic or subject you're exploring, you can have a look through these. And we've got over 5 million objects in our different collections. So that's why we need these themes, because otherwise it's a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. But I want us to focus on impressionists today. So if we go to the next slide, as though we have clicked on impressionists. So some of you might recognize some of these paintings, but before we start talking about Impressionism, I'm going to put Sue-Ann on the spot now. What do you think Impressionism is or means? Have a guess.
It's a big word. I haven't heard of it often. Um, a f- a f- what springs to mind is the first impression of something you see, possibly.
Yeah, so if you break the word up, impressionism. So it's
Hmm.
giving you an impression of the scene. So at the
Okay.
time, when this art movement started, everyone was into quite detailed, almost exact camera image type paintings or religious paintings. But what Impressionists wanted to do was capture the scene through using lively brushstrokes, um, and not just painting, but creating an impression and capturing the emotions and feelings of a scene. So it developed in France in the 19th century, and all the artists, they wanted to paint outdoors in nature, kind of on the spot, rather than gathering sketches and going back to a studio. So it was a very kind of freeing sort of art. Um, and they like to paint landscapes and the views of everyday life. And at the time, this wasn't really something that was done either. But it's all about those lively brushstrokes and capturing the scene. So if we go to the next picture now, this one is by a famous artist called Claude Monet. Again, you might have seen some of these images before. Um, But what do you notice, Sue-Ann, about this picture? What springs out to you? Anything?
Um, well, this is an outdoors picture, and they've got that building there, and the reflection of the building on the water is what I see from the picture. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about the feeling? Is it warm? Is it cold?
Um, let's say warm.
Yeah. So I think one thing I notice is it's very colourful.
Yeah.
Um, and again, you've got like the impression of a building that's maybe reflected on water. And it gives me the feeling of a kind of a warm summer evening just as the sun's
Mhm.
setting.
Mhm.
Now, if we zoom in on the next slide, you can see the blend of colours and the lively brush strokes. So even in these darker bits, these shadows, there's bright purples, there's oranges, there's yellows, and that's really building up the image. And if we zoom in again, you can see again in more detail, although this is quite a dark bit of the picture, it's very, very colourful. You can see the brush strokes, but it starts to look a bit like, what is that? You don't know. It could be anything. So impressionist paintings become clearer as you stand back from them. So when you go to see them in the gallery, sometimes you see people stood back so they can see the whole painting as you can in this next slide. So that's the full image again. And the National Museum Wales has the largest Impressionist collection outside of Paris. And if we go to the next slide, we can see, again, this one's quite famous, Water Lilies by Claude Monet. Again, if you went into this in detail, it's quite kind of blurry, but coming back, you get the impression of a lake or a pond with water lilies on it. And then another example, if we look at this one by Van Gogh. So maybe one of the most famous artists, possibly Van Gogh. Um, and this is very popular with our visitors from all around the world. And again, that's because we have the largest collection of this kind of painting outside of Paris. But how do we have this in Wales? So I'm going to tell you in the next slide a little bit about the story about how we've come to get all these artworks. So there were two sisters called Gwendolyn and Margaret, and they created a special art collection, and they donated 260 art drawings to the National Museum of Wales, to the people of Wales. And they were quite wealthy, as you can probably tell from these photographs, because their grandfather, David Davis, made his fortune through the Industrial Revolution in Victorian Wales. And in their upbringing, they were very much taught that it was because they were Christians, it was their Christian duty to sort of make good of the wealth that they had. So as young women, they developed a deep love of the visual arts and music, and they traveled Europe. And they had a really good eye for collecting this art. And like I said at the time, it wasn't really kind of quite understood, like maybe some modern art isn't understood today. But I'm glad they collected them because, you know, we've got some of these fantastic artists now. So before you go to your Kahoot, I'm just going to summarize because we've talked about loads of things there. So we've mentioned that the treasures of Wales belong to the people of Wales. So that's you. That the images of the National Museum of Wales are free to use. Okay. That impressionist artists paint outdoors, and they do it quickly to capture the feeling of a moment. And Margaret and Gwendolyn here collected most of those artworks. So over to you now for the quiz bit.
Oh, diolch Danielle. And it's great to hear that we have access to this amazing resource through the collection. How do we find this collection? Was through the Amgueddfa Cymru website?
Yeah, if you go to Amgueddfa Cymru and go on the Learn section, there's a link to it there, but I can put one in the chat at the end. And so if any teachers want to look at that, they can then.
Wonderful. Yeah, and I'll send it through email as well. Right then.
Brilliant.
I hope you're all ready for the first 4 questions following what Danielle has just told us. Right then, first question. Who do the treasures and collections looked after by Amgueddfa Cymru belong to? Who do they belong to? One very rich person, only the museum staff, the people of Wales, or a secret club? Who do the treasures and collections belong to? Well done, a great start. Yes, the people of Wales. Wonderful. Right, second question. What did Impressionist artists like to do when creating their paintings? Paint indoors using very long brushes, paint outdoors quickly to capture the feeling of a moment, paint only animals from the zoo, or paint using only black and white colours? Yes, well done. Paint outdoors quickly to capture the feeling of a moment. 399 of you. Well done. Right, third question. What is special about the pictures on Museum Wales images on the website? Do you have to pay a lot of money to download them? They are only for adults to use. They are free to download and use in school projects, or they can only be seen in the museum building. What do you think? Yes, they are free to download for you to use. Well done. Right, last question of this section and double points. Who were Gwendolyn and Margaret Davis? They were sisters who collected important artworks and gave them to Amgueddfa Cymru. Famous footballers from Wales, inventors of the telephone, or explorers who travelled to the North Pole. Who were they? Oh, wow. 569 of you got that right. Well done. Yes, they were sisters who collected important artworks and gave them to Amgueddfa Cymru. Let's have a look then at how the scoreboard's looking after the first four questions. Well done, Agent Tiger coming out on top, Funny Ostrich and Stella Frog. Well done, you. Right, diolch, Danielle. We'll go on to the next part.
Well, I'm impressed so far with how many we're getting that right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the next story is going to be from St Fagan's National History Museum. And this next photograph, you can see Ysgol Maestir, which is a Victorian schoolhouse, and it was built near Lampeter in 1880. And it might look a little bit different to your school. So let's talk about what the school looked like now in that next slide. So many schools in the Welsh countryside would have looked like this in the 1880s, okay? There's only one classroom where all the pupils would sit, and the desks are facing the teacher at the front. So you can see perhaps in the next photograph now. And younger pupils would be at the front of the class, so you can see there, and the older ones at the backyard. And sorry, at the back. And the backyard is split to keep boys and girls separate during break times. Okay. So it's one big room, younger ones at the front, older ones at the back. So next slide now, Sue-Ann. So there, again, you can see, so it came from Lampeter. So like all the houses in St Fagans, they were at the point where they were falling apart. No one was able to look after them. So St Fagans brought them brick by brick and rebuilt it like a big jigsaw puzzle, big three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. And now, of course, schools and visitors can visit it. So let's have a little look, and let's go into the 360 through the doorway. And just have a little look around the room. So you can see there's lots of wooden desks, a nice big fireplace on the right there to keep the pupils warm. And perhaps if we move forward a little bit, or what you can see a few things up on the board there. Could you click on that one, Sue-Ann? Sorry, the one on the blackboard there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a bamboo cane. Okay. So we'll just look at some of these things. We're going to discuss them then in a little bit. What about on the teacher's desk there? What have we got there? Oh, finger stocks. Oh, and a big bell. And then looking around the room, you get an impression of what the classroom was like. Okay.
It's very different to what our pupils on this quiz today. I'm sure they wouldn't have an open fire, I wouldn't think, to start with.
No. And then these wooden desks. Now, I did actually have a wooden desk like this when I was a child, but it was an antique at the time, and I really liked it, and I had it at home one of my birthdays. You can see an abacus there as well. That's it. Yeah, so that would be used for counting and arithmetic. So if we go back to the slides now, I'll talk through some of those items we picked up on there. So first of all, what were children learning? They spent most of their time learning the 3 R's. Now, I think this is quite confusing because they're not all written with R, but they've all got a R sound in them. So these were reading, writing, and arithmetic. And arithmetic, of course, we call maths today. So every child would learn the 3 R's but the boys would be taught more in-depth subjects such as history, advanced maths, geography, whilst the girls were taught ironing, laundry, and how to change nappies and care for babies. Which classes? Well, I suppose, do you think that's fair, Sue-Ann?
Well, not in today's world, is it? Maybe
No.
times were different, as they say back then.
Yeah, so
Mm,
I personally would have probably been more interested in the boys' class.
yeah,
Um, Whereas today you have that choice. I mean, you have to learn all different things, obviously, in school, but as you get older, you get a choice then what you can look
yeah.
at. And often the lessons that they taught were about the British Empire and not really anything about Welsh history. And in the photograph there, you can see some children outside. So they would go out to the front yard and do like a drill for exercise. So that's like their PE, I guess. In the next slide, you can see there's a Victorian slate that was used for practicing to write on. Because, like I said, there was only one teacher in the school, and then the teacher would pick kind of a pupil teacher, which was usually the brightest and oldest girl, and they were given the task of teaching the youngest children. And the main style of learning was by rote, which means by memorizing lots of facts. So, kind of repeating things like in parrot fashion. So, if we go to the next slide, you can see the sort of pen and ink bottles there that were used by all children. And if we go to the next slide, you can see an example of the way they were taught to write. So it's quite beautiful, very, I'm sure it took lots of time to get good at that. There was only one, I've mentioned that bit already. So they would practice this over and over and repeat it. And if you got ink on your hands or messy work, then it was punishable. I know I found it very difficult at school to get my handwriting good. Have you got neat writing, Sue-Ann, or?
Well, I'm okay, but I remember a friend in school and they were left-handed and wrote, and obviously their sleeve went into the ink. So,
Yes,
yeah, but they weren't punished, obviously.
that's good. Yeah. But they would make them write common phrases, to kind of get ideas into their heads as well around life manners and even important things around agriculture. So think they have to write things like children must be seen and not heard. You might have heard
Mm,
that one. A
yeah.
dry March, wet April, and cool May fill the barn and bring much hay. Avoid bad boys and girls. So they'd be writing things like that to kind
Mm.
of get those ideas instilled in them. And if we go to the next slide, obviously we're talking about a school in Wales. So did they speak Welsh? Well, yes. Most of the children spoke Welsh at home, but in school they were taught in English. And as a way to stop them speaking Welsh in class, um, they would use this Welsh knot. Can you see the wooden piece there? It was on a kind of a rope, and you'd have to sit with it round your neck if you were caught speaking Welsh. And at the end of the day, you might then be punished with the cane. Um, and we don't know if the Welsh knot was used in this particular school, but at the time, um, that was common practice. So, how were they punished then? So, if we go to the next slide, so um, very differently to in schools today. We still expect children to be well behaved in school. But in this time, if they were not, they could be punished, like I said, with the Welsh knot. they might have to sit with a posture board, which was kind of a thing that made them sit up straight like that and they couldn't move. Remember I showed you the finger stocks? That's if you were a fidget. There you can see the cane in the picture. Okay, so the cane would be used to hit children across their hands, and this would really hurt. But like I said, those finger stocks, if you were a fidget, again, I'm quite a fidget, so I definitely would have ended up in those, and I would have been quite upset by that, I think. So lots of different types of punishment there. So the cane, it's like a bamboo cane. And that would be used and could be very painful. And I imagine the fear of perhaps being hit by one of those would make it quite hard to learn as well, which is why, of course, and many other reasons why we don't use these punishments in school today. And then lastly, this is the class, dosbarth Miss Thomas. Mrs. Thomas's class in 1895. And then to sum up before the quiz, so again, we've been learning about Victorian school. Okay, so school in the Victorian times. Before 1880, children were working long and often dangerous days. But when the law changed, free schools opened and children were required by law to have an education. Now, the whole school would learn together in one classroom, and they were forced to speak and learn English, despite the fact that most of them spoke Welsh at home. And if they were caught speaking Welsh, they would have to wear the Welsh knot around the neck. And there were many cruel punishments to ensure that the children behaved well. Yeah, so we're ready for the next quiz.
Great. I wonder, Danielle, how many of you learners today have been to Ysgol Maestir at St Fagan, or the next time you go, you'll know a little bit more about the school. Right, let's start with the first question. How many classrooms did Maestir School have? Was it 1, 2, 3, or 4? How many classrooms did the school have? Yeah, well done. Only one room for everyone. Well done. Right, second question. Before 1880, what was true about children and schools? All children had to go to school every day. Children didn't have to go to school and many had jobs. Only children over 12 went to school, or children could only learn at home. What do you think? Oh, that was a hard one, Danielle. Before 1880, children didn't have to go to school, and many had jobs and they were working very long days. The law changed after 1880, I think Danielle said.
Yeah,
Well
that's right.
done.
So that's a tricky one, that one.
Yeah, well done. Right, third question. What language did most children speak at home in the Maestir area? Was it English, French, Welsh, or Irish? What did they speak at home, the children who went to Maestir school? What do you think? Oh, some said Irish and French. That's interesting. No, it was Welsh. Well done to the 464 of you. They spoke Welsh at home. Right. Fourth question in this round, double points for this one. How were children punished if they misbehaved? They were given extra playtime. They had to go home early. They had to clean the school, or they might have been given the Welsh knot. How were they punished? Yes, they might have been given the Welsh knot. Well done. Right, let's have a look at the scoreboard. Oh, well done, Agent Tiger, still there on the leaderboard. And Invincible Penguin has come up, and Blue Pelican. Well done, you. Right, diolch, Danielle. We'll go on to the next.
Well done, Diane Powell.
Yeah.
Right, so the next slide, the last story is about the unseen story of Wales and slavery. And we have to delve again into the museum's collections to find out more about this. So on the next slide, then, we've got a bit of a definition of slavery. So slavery, if someone is enslaved, they are under complete control of another person without rights, freedom, or choice. So in a really horrible situation as a slave. If we go to the next slide, the transatlantic trade in enslaved African people. So that meant they were going across the Atlantic to collect slaves from Africa. This started in the 1500s and was a massive business. At least 12 million Africans were taken abroad by force to be enslaved labor. Now, it's sometimes hard to think, well, what did we have to do with this in Wales? But we did benefit from this trade in many ways. But often the ways Wales benefited are hard to see. So I'm going to sort of pick out some of those now, and we're going to look at a strange object next. So, any idea what you think these might be, Sue-Ann?
Well, if you hadn't have said slavery, I would have said something to do with farming or agriculture, but no, I'm not sure.
Yeah, so they look a bit like a bracelet, don't they? Or
Yeah,
like you're saying, it could be something farming related. They're
yeah.
called manillas, and they were made of copper and brass and were used as almost like money. They would be used to trade along the African coast for enslaved people. So rich people from Britain would go over on boats. They would exchange these with other people, maybe in Africa, to take people as slaves. Um, and we'll have a closer look at them in the next slide. And a person could be sold for between 12 and 25 of these. And after 1750, this rose to around 50 because there was a real demand to have more slaves because it was a really cheap way for rich people to get work done for themselves. So if we look at the next picture now, White Rock Copper Works in 1744 was a copper works in Swansea. And this copper works was used to make these manillas. And it led to the copper works being called Manila House. So that's one direct way people in Wales were involved in slavery in some way. So the workers themselves there perhaps didn't really think too much about what these things were being used for. They were themselves perhaps quite poor, making a living, but it was all connected to this horrible business of slavery. So if we look at our next object, we've got a painting of a man that looks like quite powerful and important. Have you seen this painting or any idea who this might be, Sue-Ann? Don't worry if you don't know.
I have seen the photo before. I think last year when we did a similar session, but Thomas Picton, if I remember correctly, is his name, but I
Correct.
can't remember the history about him.
Yeah, so Thomas Picton. So in this picture, it's really giving the impression of an important, dignified man. And This picture is showing Picton, who was born in Haverfordwest in 1758, so that's West Wales. And for many, Picton was seen as a war hero and a source of national pride for Wales. But if we look deeper into his history, we find out that Picton was also the first British governor of a country called Trinidad, and he was also known for ruthless treatment of enslaved people. So some people had slaves, and may have obviously how they were treated wasn't great, but some were really brutal and treated them horribly, and Picton was one of those, unfortunately. So if we look at this next bit of evidence, in 1803 he was brought to trial in London for authorizing the torture of a girl called Louisa Cauldron, who was just 14 years old. So money was stolen from the house Louisa was working at as a housekeeper, and Picton believed she either knew who stole it or she was something to do with it. Louisa said, she didn't know and she was nothing to do with it, but he tortured her. So this is quite the next slide. If you bring that up, you can see the horrible way Louisa was hung from a scaffold by her wrist for almost an hour and supported on this little pointy peg you can see in the picture, and that's known as picketing. So later, in this next slide now, we know that Picton went to trial because even people who kept slaves and didn't treat them great were quite outraged by how Picton was treating his slaves, and he was investigated for torturing enslaved people, and he was found guilty, but he was never sentenced for it because he was this important figure in history and in time, and we know that kind of thing still happens today. Maybe not around slavery, but around other things. So we're going to go now to another picture, again of a picture of a man here, which I don't expect anyone to recognize this picture. It's a man called Edward Williams, but he was more popularly known as Iolo Morgannwg. So Iolo established the Gorsedd of Bards, which by 1819 would be linked to the Eisteddfod. So he was a cultural man in Wales. And he owned a shop in Cowbridge and said that he only sold East India sweets uncontaminated with human gore. So that's quite a strange sentence there. But what he means is his sweets that he sells are not linked to slavery. Okay, so he was a man of morals, and he knew that in these sugary sweets, sugar plantations used enslaved people, and so the sugar products that were flooding into Britain at the time wouldn't exist without other people being tortured and not having their freedom. And Iolo had, he had good morals. He refused to sell these products because they were connected to slavery. And his three brothers who moved from Wales to Jamaica, they actually earned a living with enslaved people. And if we go to the next slide, here's what Iolo said. So he said, I've got three rich brothers in Jamaica, supposed to be worth £60,000. So, Iolo could have done the same as his brothers, really. And I understand that my brothers who carry on business in partnership have upward of 240 slaves. So Iolo didn't like this. And in the next slide, you can see an interesting object. And it's an anti-slavery medal. And it says, am I not a man and a brother? So it's saying, am I not a human as well? And Yolo supported somebody called William Wilberforce and the movement that sought to abolish and get rid of slavery and eventually make it illegal as it is, of course, today. And in a letter, he spoke dramatically about how he would rather see his own children starve than have anything to do with that horrible slave trade. Okay. So this is an example of a good man standing up for what he believes in. So before we go on to the quiz, because I've talked about a lot there, if you are interested in finding out more, we've got lots of learning resources on our website that you can look at. So just to summarize then, we've looked at how slavery was connected to Wales. We talked about some of those objects, that an enslaved person is forced to work with no freedom and no rights, and that manillas were made in Wales and were a type of money to trade enslaved people, and that Iolo Morgannwg, the last man we looked at there, refused to sell sugar products in his shop that were made using the labour of enslaved people, and that laws were made to protect everyone and stop slavery in this country. So hopefully you've taken some of that in, and good luck with the last bit of the quiz.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. There's a lot of information there, but information we need to know about our history, isn't it? But it's very nice to hear that we've moved on from there. Right then, the last 4 questions then. What is an enslaved person? Is it a person who chooses where they work? A person forced to work for someone else with no freedom or rights? A person learning a new skill? Or a person who works only at night? What do you think? Yes, it's a person forced to work for someone else with no freedom and no rights. Well done. Right. Second question. What were manillas used for? As a type of money to trade for enslaved people, musical instruments, toys for children, or decorations for houses? What did Danielle say were manillas used for? Yeah, they were a type of money to trade for enslaved people. Well done, the 483 of you who got that right. What are we on now? Third question, right. Why did Iolo Morgannwg refuse to sell most sugar products in his shop? He didn't like sweet food. Sugar was too expensive. Sugar was made using the labour of enslaved people, or he wanted to sell fruit only. Sugar was made using the labour of enslaved people. Yes, so that's why Iolo Morgannwg refused to sell most sugar products. Well done, 422 of you. And the last question, and double points for this question. Why don't we have slavery today in most countries? People decided they didn't like working anymore. Nobody wants to travel to other countries. There are no materials left to trade, or laws were made to protect everyone's freedom and stop slavery. Yeah, well done. 436 of you. Laws were made to protect everyone's freedom and stop slavery, which is great news. Well done, everyone. Right then, let's have a look at the podium. Lovely Ladybug in third, Invincible Penguin in second place, and Agent Tiger coming out on top. Well done, all of you. Now remember, if you came in the top 5 there, email me with the winning nickname, name of the class, and the name of the school. Well done. We hope you enjoyed. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you, Danielle, for the
Thank
stories
you.
and the quiz today. And thank you all for joining. Diolch yn fawr pawb. Hwyl.
Diolch. Hwyl, ta-da.